The gavel sounds like thunder, and all heads turn to the woman who never once sought sympathy. Meri. She's not a sidebar in someone else's book today. She's the front page. Breaking. Meri sues Kody for millions, and the figure isn't the surprise. It's why. If you're ready to learn the secret that took a family's private wounds public, stick with me, and let me know in the comments what truth you believe Meri ultimately determined the world needed to know. The judge bangs the gavel, calling the courtroom to order, and the air constricts like a collar. Kody's parked at the defendant's table, jaw set, hands folded too neatly. Robyn's eyes shine with the kind of tears that say she's been here before, on the edge of a fall. To Meri's right, Christine's chin lifts, calm not triumphant. Janelle's stare is plain as daylight. Enough is enough. Across the room, the press leans forward, pens ready, but this is more than a headline. This is a ledger, finally balanced. The courtroom has a faint lemon-scented polish, and the dry paper smell of file folders. Afternoon sunlight cuts across dark wood benches, illuminating the motes of dust that float like old memories. I'm your guide for this tale, your voice in the silence, the one who explains to you what the cameras cannot see, and what the cameras miss is how Meri's fingertips tremble as she stands, only for a second, before she stills them against the smooth weight of her statement. She appears older and younger at the same time, older in her eyes, younger in the downward curve of her mouth. A woman who has weighed the price and is prepared to pay. This isn't revenge, she says firmly. It's about the truth and what it costs me to bear it alone. A murmur runs through the room. Kody's cheek jerks. Robyn squishes a tissue, till the paper creases like a white flag. If you've ever remained silent in order to maintain peace, you know the bill always comes due, either in dollars or in the years you can't retrieve. Kody used to stride into spaces as if he owned the place, as if charm was a savings account he'd never tap out. But now his confidence is a pant size too large. He looks over at Robyn. Her lips form a prayer that you can't quite hear. Behind them, a woman clears her throat, and the sound bounces off the walls. The judge's eyebrows turn down. A man who has seen it all. Yet not this family. Not this knot. He calls for opening statements. Meri's attorney rises, mid-50s, gray-templed, voice warm as a church pew. Ladies and gentlemen, he begins. This case isn't about punishing a man for being imperfect. It's about a pattern of broken promises, financial entanglements engineered to isolate and control, and the deliberate erasure of one woman's contributions to a household she was told would honor her as an equal. Kody's lawyer responds with polish and accuracy. We are going to establish that the plaintiff is misconstruing mundane marital and family life as ill will. But the words linger in the air like a ladder, without a final rung. Tone shift. Let's leave the legal and enter the human. You can't discuss a heart without discussing history. In those years when closeness was marketed like a sermon, Meri balanced the books, the calendars, the birthdays, the end-of-month jitters you don't ever get to see on TV. The beef in court is dollars, property transactions, companies, rights to name and image, but the beef within each individual's heart is time. Who got it? Who spent it? Who squandered it? Who pilfered it? The first witness is called a family friend who used to see the bank statements when everyone was too busy to look. She's calm, not vindictive, with a memory like a file cabinet. She testifies to strange transfers that began small, an extra 100 here, 1,000 there, then swelled into a river. She testifies to signatures appearing without follow-through, conversations that ended with "we'll talk later," and later never came. Stick with me, because what comes next bridges the money to the events no one wants to relive. And that is when the narrative leaves the numbers and enters choices. Robyn's expression smooths into a frown that is not anger but a plea for comprehension. Hers, his, theirs. Christine remains very still, a lighthouse in a storm. Janelle's jaw chews a little, the way it does when she is counting in silence to 10. And Meri keeps her eyes on the jury, and not on Kody. She has found that you can lose yourself gazing at the person who will not glance back. We conclude today's beginnings with a sound you never forget, the gavel of the judge, as hard as a broken bone. We will recess until tomorrow, he declares. Folks jump to their feet, starving for oxygen. Kody rises, but slowly Robyn whispers something that allows him to catch his breath. Meri tarries, as if the room is one that owes her one last still minute. As the courtroom clears, A courier appears at the clerk's table with a sealed envelope addressed to the court. No return address, just a single word scrawled in felt tip. Ledgers. The clerk freezes. The judge lifts his gaze, and Mary's attorney, already halfway to the door, turns around like he's heard a bell only he recognizes. The envelope comes down like a meteor. Contents: photocopies from a spiral notebook, margins scribbled with arithmetic, initials and dates that loop back to holidays and house moves. There is ink bleeding through where a hand was pressed down too hard. Relocation occurs repeatedly, accompanied by figures that don't add up to public accounts. The court resumes. The voice of the judge is stone skipping water. Measured, deliberate. New materials have been filed. Both parties will consider them. Kody's lawyer rises, controlled warmth in his voice. Your Honor, we have grave chain of custody issues. The judge gestures. We'll take their admissibility into account. Let's move on for the moment. Mary's lawyer draws a breath large enough to light a lantern. Ma'am? He addresses the clerk who dated the envelope. Read the heading on page 1. She reads, Household Operating, Q3, Private. He addresses the jury. Notice the word private. Ask yourselves, private from whom? When papers emerge out of the darkness, it's either a trick or a lifeline, and you can generally tell which by who begins to sweat. Kody wets his brow. Maybe it is the lights. Maybe it is memory. Present tense story time. Before everything became loud, there were soft adjustments, the kind you rationalize with lines like we'll even it out later, or it's all the same pot. Later it appears, never arrived, at least for everyone at the same time. Christine's moment to speak, her voice clipped, not nasty. There were days, she tells me, I inquired where a budget was spent. The response was always tomorrow. The lawyer nods. And did tomorrow arrive? Christine's lips pressed together. Not for me. Not for Meri. Robyn, next on the list, picks her words as stepping stones in a rushing river. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, she says, voice interwoven with pain. I assume decisions were pooled. For stability. Her gaze cuts to Kody. His hands are clenched on the table, palms down, as if ready to push himself up or pin himself down. Let's take a breath. Your mind's camera pulls in close. The flick at the outside corner of Kody's eye. The rolling back of Mary's shoulders every time a date echoes a memory. You sense the heat building. There's no AC for a day like this one. We are discussing money, to be sure, but also what was owed to grown women who kept showing up. Here's the unspectacular truth. Individuals don't appear in court due to a single bad day. They appear due to 100 little days that didn't mend. Mary's lawyer threads a line through the testimony. Relocation overlapped with milestones, anniversaries, a child's graduation, that winter, when one house's roof leaked. Miss Brown, he coaxes Meri softly. When did you first know your name had become a placeholder? Meri responds without drama. The day I saw a contract that had my signature on it, and I had no recollection of ever signing. A sigh shifts the benches. You're saying it was forged. The defense interrupts. Meri shakes her head. I'm saying I was pressured to sign things that didn't fit the descriptions. The tone now becomes confessional. Kody steps forward. His voice is heavy with the conviction that he can still talk over gravity. We were a family, he says. Money went where it was needed. The attorney's eyes come forward. Needed by whom? Kody's eyes slip. Just a little. By the whole. The attorney turns a page. Then why do these lines read air and K stabilization, while the others read general? There is a silence, as loud as a siren. The judge calls for a brief recess. Everyone files out with the uncomfortable silence of a church dismissal, following an unpopular sermon. In the corridor, Christine supports Meri with a hand on her elbow. Robyn blots at her eyes, and whispers to Kody, we can fix this, as if the pronoun, we still operates in the same way. Recess comes to an end, and Mary's lawyer makes an announcement. Your Honor, we call our next witness, the notary who signed the disputed contract. A door opens. A woman in a navy blazer enters, with a frown that indicates she's kept this secret longer than she intended. The notary places her hand on the Bible, swears in, and sits. Her pen, a rusty metal click pen, is balanced on the rail like a soldier off duty. She gazes at the document, then at Meri, and you can see the years shifting themselves in her face. I recall the day, she says. It was raining. Power was flickering. People were rushing about. She smoothed the pages. I was informed it was a routine renewal. I was presented with ID. Signatures were signed. The defense takes advantage of the gap. So let me get this right. Everything was in order. The notary pauses. Everything was rushed. We inch closer. The fingers of the notary tap. 1, 2, 3. I posed a question. She goes on. Regarding a clause that reallocated revenue from licenses, I was assured it was temporary, for stabilization. I recall that phrase. She glances at Kody. You told me it would be addressed in the next quarter. The room spins. And was it? Meri's lawyer inquires. The notary shakes her head. Not to my knowledge. When someone remembers the exact words years later, it's because those words never stopped echoing. Kody's jaw works. We were building, he says. We needed flexibility. Meri's eyes narrow. Not with anger. With something cooler. Certainty. Flexibility for you. She answers in a tone so even the microphones lean in. Rigidity for me. Tone change. Intimate. Emotional. The narrative weaves us into the in-between places of testimony. We sense Meri scanning back calendars, noticing where her name was written in and scratched out. We notice Robyn tugging at the rim of a paper cup, attempting to iron out a wrinkle that keeps reappearing. We notice Christine, always the teller of truth, sorting out which fights were for yesterday, and which are for today. And Janelle. Janelle is the conscience of the ledger, practical, equitable, spent. Back to the stand. The notary pulls out a personal log. Dates, places, a line or two, clause flagged, told stabilization. The judge raises an eyebrow. Objection from the defense. Overruled. Miss Brown, the attorney inquires of Meri. How much is at risk in real dollars? Meri's reply is straightforward. Enough to pay for a future. I didn't get to plan. A stir. A rustle. A cough that seems like assent. If you're still watching, tell me this. What's the price of a promise kept too long in the dark? Undefined. We pivot to the exhibits. Emails with ASAP in the subject. Text sent too late at night. Voice notes where a weary voice says, "We'll fix it after the holidays." The paper trail stretches like a long road, straight, then bending, then disappearing into a forest that looks like excuses. The defense attempts an alternate approach. Isn't it true, Miss Brown, that you benefited from the family brand? Meri responds, I'm not suing for what I didn't earn. I'm suing for what I was told I would share. The two concepts float there. Not adversaries, simply alternative maps of the same town. The judge calls for order. When someone in the gallery gasps at a figure read aloud, 7 digits, 2 commas, the breath of a lifetime. Kody's voice grows thin. We were trying to hold an empire together. Meri's attorney replies, almost gently, sometimes an empire is just a house with too many locks. Just as you think it's over for the day. The judge glances over the edge of his glasses. Now before we recess, there is a question of the Irshan and K Stabilization's account ownership. Counsel, tomorrow we will require actual names on the corporate filing. Robyn winces. She hadn't anticipated being written into the paperwork that way. Morning comes with a sky the hue of ancient silver. The courtroom is busy early. Folks feel that today, the phrase stabilization account will belong to an individual's name. And nothing is more dramatic than an enigma, finally crossing into sunlight. The clerk reads the filing. The account specifies 2 officers. One is clear. The other isn't, because it's not Meri, isn't Christine, isn't Janelle, it's Robyn. A collective sharp gasp. Robyn's face freezes. A glass lake containing a tempest. Explain, the judge says. Kindly enough. Robyn speaks, her voice trembling. It was administrative, Your Honor. I signed because I was requested to. She addresses Meri. I thought the idea was to sort it all out when it all died down. Her eyes beg for time that cannot be allowed. Time, much like money, is not always refundable. Sometimes the holder of the keys didn't request them. She simply didn't know how to return them. Kody cracks, frustration worn thin. We did what we had to do, he says, hands out, as if presenting his bare hands to the room. We were bleeding money. We were under siege in public. We needed to consolidate. His voice gets louder, and the judge slaps the bench. Sir, he cautioned. Kody swallows it back. The tone becomes contemplative. We linger with what consolidate means, how it can be a corporate term that sounds like an individual erasure. The narrative takes you by the hand. Imagine a woman standing on the porch, observing everyone else load the car. They say they don't have space for her suitcase, but they'll get back to her. Hours go by, and the porch light remains on. Meri, hold steady now, addresses him straight out, not to chastise, but to stake a claim. I am not asking for your devastation, she tells him. I am asking for my due. Christine's hand, braced on the bench, clenches into a fist the way you do when the entirety of your body knows a true sentence. Janelle gives a once nod, a gesture akin to a signature. The courtroom enters into testimony regarding work that never appears on paper. Event planning, meetups for fans, brand collaborations that came with commitments, appearances, merchandise, disclaimers. For everyone, there is a question: who got paid, who got rewarded, who got promised, and whose promise went into someone else's ledger. If you're feeling this in your stomach, it's because fairness isn't theoretical. It's the most human math we do. The defense calls a CPA, who says the books are messy but lawful. The jury listens, polite, but their faces look like they've smelled smoke too long to believe there's no fire. Meri's attorney counters with a forensic accountant, whose charts turn confusion into clarity. Arrows pointing where flows should have been shared. Circles where the rivers narrowed to a single channel. Kody looks tired, less defiant now, more haunted by the reruns of decisions made in louder seasons. Robyn's tears come, finally, not soft but silent, the kind that steal your breath. She whispers, I didn't want this. And for a second Meri's face softens. Then she sets her jaw. Mercy and justice are cousins, not twins. The judge imposes a 24-hour settlement break. In the hallway, a door shuts on a cramped conference room. Inside, Meri, her lawyer, Kody, Robyn, and a table worn at the edges. The camera in your head lingers outside frosted glass. Words indistinct, figures shifting. A shadow lifts a hand. Another lowers a head. Someone rises so abruptly, the chair legs squeak like a caution. The following day, the corridor is a stream. Reporters, spectators, those who never missed a Sunday sermon and those who never attended. Everyone wants to hear if a house with too many locks discovered one key that is suitable for them all. Court is in session. No one smiles. The judge inquires, have we reached an agreement? Meri's lawyer rises. We have an offer. He reads repayment of diverted funds plus interest, public acknowledgement of contributions, 2 years independent auditor, and a sunset clause that eliminates the stabilization account permanently and distributes brand equity proportionally, with Meri being awarded backdated credit for certain ventures. The room falls silent. This is greater than a check. This is history rewritten to show labor. Kody's lawyer speaks with him. Kody appears older today, or perhaps merely human in a manner he has shunned. He rises. Your Honor, he says, voice low. I accept the money terms. He scans Meri, and I accept the recognition. His speech is not an apology. Not quite. But neither is it a defense. Perhaps that will be enough. Perhaps it won't. Robyn swallows hard. I'll sign to close out the account, she says, her voice thread thin. And I'll cooperate with the audit. She attempts to catch Meri's eyes. For an instant, one instant, Meri allows it to happen. You can tell they recall all the birthdays, all the midnight sandwiches, all the driveways they pulled out of and never turned to look back. Closure is not a door slamming. It is the soft click, when the latch is at last home. The judge talks like a man who recognizes a story when he sees one. This court understands that families are not corporations, and yet once money and fame come into a house, they turn a corporation out of love. Today we are unraveling that. He signs off on the agreement, subject to signatures and the auditor's schedule. The gavel drops, but we're not finished. The story leads you to the courthouse steps. The sun is gentler than yesterday. Microphones converge. Meri moves to the podium. I didn't come here to destroy, she states. I came here to be counted. She expresses gratitude to the court, her attorneys, the ones who supported her when belief was costly. Someone asks, do you forgive him? She hesitates. I'm learning how to forgive without forgetting. That's the work. Christine lingers slightly in the background, an anchor who became a sail. Janelle is present, direct as ever, bobbing like a metronome for cents. Robyn hangs back by the lip of the steps, hands clenched, a symbol of entangled roles. Kody listens, expression impassive, then disappears from the microphone, as though the past were a room he's attempting to slip out without slamming the door. The last tone change is one of reflection, of tenderness, for the folks at home who've experienced the smaller versions of this very large tale. We speak of fairness, how it's not revenge, how it's not victory dance, it's a ledger balance so the future can start on honest terms. We speak of Meri's inner strength, of the long drive home when you know the silence is changed now. It's yours. Before you leave, tell me this in the comment. If you were Meri, would you have settled, or would you have fought for a complete trial and verdict? What does justice mean to you when love and money intersect?